Okay, good afternoon, everyone. This is a regular meeting of the Hollister City Council on October 1, 2024. The meeting is now called to order. It is 4 p.m. City Clerk, could you please call roll?
Councilmember Perez.
Present.
Councilmember Morales. Here. Councilmember Burns.
Here.
Mayor Casey.
Here.
And Vice Mayor Resendez is not present. Thank you.
All right. Councilmember Morales, could you lead us in the pledge? City Attorney, could you please announce any reportable action from the September 17th, 2024 closed session?
There was no reportable action from that meeting, Mayor.
Okay, I think we'll move on then to our special orders of the day. We're going to do a proclamation for Binational Health Week. We have someone here to read. Victoria, how are you? I fell down. Oh, no. All right, who wants to hold this? You want to have that? Sure. Let me. Oh, okay, sure, we can do that. Then we'll read it. Okay. All right. Whereas, according to the United States Census of 2017, this country is home to more than 57 million people of Latino origin. And whereas improving the health of mobile populations requires multiple approaches in service design, delivery, funding priorities, and most fundamentally requires strong binational commitment. And whereas Binational Health Week reflects coordinated efforts to improve the quality of life of underserved Latino populations by expanding access to health care, increasing health insurance coverage, and reducing unmet health needs. And whereas Binational Health Week provides an opportunity to highlight critical health issues in the state of California and throughout the United States, and will serve as a basis for future bilateral efforts. Now, therefore, I, Mia Casey, Mayor of Hollister, do hereby proclaim in honor of those efforts to improve public health, the month of October 2024 be declared the 2024 annual Binational Health Week throughout the city of Hollister. Did you want to say a few words? Anyone?
Well, yes, I'm very proud to be on the board of the clinic, and I would love to have more new members. It's always fun to think about health, and this community, we certainly need a lot of help together and be unity. So I'm just say here, thank you.
We would like to thank the City Council for this recognition and also formally invite you to our Binational Health Week celebration taking place on October 16th at our clinics. I believe we sent out some emails, but if you're still interested, please give us a call or we can always re-forward that to you. Thank you very much.
Madam Mayor, can I make a statement in regards to this proclamation?
Certainly. Go ahead.
Thank you. Congratulations and thank you for coming down here. I had a conversation with board member Montoya, and she was gracious enough to donate to the city of Hollister a beautiful print of a painting that was hanging in the clinic. And I would like to ask my colleagues up here if we can have it hang up here in City Hall to honor the recognition. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Before we move on to public input, quick script for you. I need to remind everyone.
Mayor Casey, we do have a presentation from the Registrar of Voters as well.
From where?
The Registrar of Voters.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry. Did we leave it off?
Oh, it's like one line, and I didn't see anything else. Sorry about that, Francisco. Please, let's go to the presentation by San Benito County Registrar of Voters.
I was going to ask. There we go. Good afternoon, Madam Mayor, City Councilmen and women. Thank you for having me here today. I'm here on behalf of the Elections Office to give you a quick presentation of the overall election that's coming up. I'm sure we're all familiar and aware that there's an election coming up, but as such, I'm going to the different districts, the cities, to speak to representatives to be able to provide them the most accurate information so that you can help us distribute correct information. I want to start off by saying, first of all, that these are the contests that are going to be appearing on the ballot. There were a lot more seats, if you will, or districts that were going to be up for an election. However, many of them did not go onto the ballot, meaning that just enough people submitted their nomination paperwork to be on the ballot, and it didn't go into a contest. As such, these are all the ones that are going to be appearing in San Benito County. Of course, depending on your jurisdiction and where you live, is who's going to appear. As it is no surprise, if you live in the city of San Juan Bautista, you're not going to have perhaps the mayor, city council, or any other districts there from Hollister appear in that race or in that ballot. In addition, we're also going to have a total of 11 measures. These are local measures that are going to be appearing on the ballot. Once again, it all depends on the jurisdiction that you live in of whether or not you see some or all of these measures. Any county-wide measures, every resident in San Benito County is going to have on their ballot. But some of these other ones or smaller jurisdictions are only going to apply to those residents in that area. For example, South Monterey County High School District. Or perhaps we're going to have something like the West Hills Community College District, which really only affects a small percentage of people in this county. Now, voting kits will be arriving in homes on the week of October 7th. This is an important deadline as we're only about a week away. So you can expect every resident of San Benito County can expect to receive their kit, including their ballot, voter guide, and any other permanent information about this upcoming election. I would like to give a disclaimer that that's the first week where ballots start arriving. It is not the day where everyone's going to receive their ballot. It is throughout that week that our post office starts delivering the ballots. In addition to receiving your ballots on that first week, October 7th is also an important date because it is the first day that you can vote in person at the elections office. As I'm sure everyone's familiar, we had a recent fire at our Hall of Records building here in downtown, so we had to relocate at 1601 Lana Way, and that is currently our temporary facility, and that is where people can come in either to vote in person or to request perhaps a duplicate ballot or to re-register to vote. In addition, the other important deadlines are that on November 2nd, we are going to be opening up 3 additional facilities. These are going to be at St. Benedict Church, San Juan Bautista Community Center, and of course the elections office. But also, I skipped on this one. On October 26th, we're also going to be opening up Abundant Life. These are all the locations that any registered voter of the county of San Benito can show up to vote, and regardless of where you live in the county. So if you happen to be a resident of San Juan Bautista and you happen to find yourself in Hollister, you can show up at any of these locations and vote. You are not assigned a particular location. Now, due to this fire, as I explained before, we still have a lot of people from the community that are showing up to our old facility. So in order to accommodate them and also to ensure that they have a quick process, we're going to be opening up a satellite office on election day right across the street here at the Community Foundation. At this location, people can find all the services that we provide at the elections office. They can register to vote, receive a new ballot, or just have any general questions they may have. We can answer them there. One of the other important, and actually something that the voters of San Benito County tend to prefer to use, up to 40 or 50% of all our voters that vote by mail use one of our drop boxes. They're located conveniently throughout the county. I do want to put a disclaimer as well that all our drop boxes are going to open on October 7th. We're going to be collecting the ballots twice a day, and they're also under 24-hour video surveillance. For this election, I'm excited to announce that one of the new features that we have is that we're going to be implementing what's called mobile voting. It is essentially a trailer that we have rigged overall to be able to provide remote voting services to people that are located in Tres Pinos, Panoche, and also in Aromas. This is going to be our pilot phase, so we are going to be announcing the dates on social media. We're also going to be sending mailers and information to the residents of those communities so they can keep an eye out and perhaps they can come and vote in person. as we may tend to forget, but it is quite a bit of a distance from South County to come into Hollister for a lot of individuals, so why not us go to them? That is it for my presentation. In addition, though, I do want to disclose that we recently mailed out a postcard to all voters of the county, so everyone should be receiving one of these. It has our official County of San Benito elections mailer logo on it, so people can actually differentiate between some of the other campaign mailers that they may be receiving right now. This one has all our dates, a lot of the same information that I provided. In addition, voters will be receiving one more postcard as we get closer to the election with additional deadlines and information. And once again, it has our official San Benito County logo so they can differentiate. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any questions from council at all?
I'd like to ask a question.
Please go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you for your presentation and for being here today. Recently, there's been rhetoric on Facebook put out saying that certain council members that have felonies that are sitting up here were allowed to run for office because you cleared them of running for office. It's my understanding, after speaking to you, that is not the case.
So today, Mr. Resendez, Councilman, I was here to present a presentation, but as you and I have discussed, any individual who runs for office essentially has to be able to be clear through our state database system. Our state database system does provide us information of people that currently have an active felony. As such, anybody that runs for office that is not in that list is clear as such because they don't appear on the state database or in the Superior Court.
Very well, but that doesn't preclude them from any felony convictions that might preclude them due to state law from actually serving and sitting up here, correct?
Can you repeat that question? Don't understand.
Essentially, there's a state statute that you and I discussed that doesn't allow certain city council members to sit up here if they violate or were convicted of a felony, finding them guilty of one of those convictions. Your office did not check for that.
I'm sorry, Francisco. I think we've already asked and answered this. I believe our
No,
city
I haven't.
attorney has responded already to your questions. He is here just to give us a general
No, I think
voting.
it's important that the public knows.
I'm sorry, I disagree, and I think
that
you're out
the
of order.
information
So
that
I'm
you're
going to
putting
ask
out
you to
there
stop. I'm
is
sorry.
incorrect.
I'm sorry, you're out of order, so
So-
we're going to continue on.
In other
Does
words,
anyone else
he
have
hasn't
any
been
other
cleared. Thank
questions?
Yeah, I
you.
wanted to thank you for being innovative in your thinking about going out to get the votes because they are so important, and that's cool. You know, you guys are thinking out of the box. A lot of people don't do that here.
Thank you.
Right. Do we have any public comment on this item?
There are no public, did you want to speak to this item or general public comment?
I do.
Okay. If you could turn in your speaker card and then you have 3 minutes.
Taking a little longer. Here we go. My name is Andy Shaw-Coron, and as you may know, I've been involved in elections probably more than any individual in this county over the period of the last 10 years. Sometimes in political offices, you know, like Robert Rivas's, sometimes initiatives, referendum, recall, etc. Oop, I forgot something. Before I start, just as we should have started with this meeting, I would like to dedicate my remarks to the Ama Mutsun people, who were the people who lived here before us. And frankly, we should start with that before we even do the Pledge of the Allegiance. A lot of government organizations do that, and I recommend that somebody make a motion to do that. But at some future time, and you'd have to go through, of course, the Brown Act, you know, notice it and let people discuss it, because that's democracy. So, speaking of democracy, I have a great admiration for this individual because I think he's taken his job quite seriously. And although we disagree on a number of different issues, I think he acts professionally and deserves everybody's respect. I disagree humbly with my good friend Roland Resendez about the issue of Rick Perez. As you may know, I worked in the prison system for 20 years, and some of my best friends who are former convicts, have gone on to great public service, including my good friend Michael Markham, who's the highest-ranking ex-felon in law enforcement in the United States, who served as third in command of the Sheriff's Department of San Benito County. Another friend, Dorsey Nunn, just wrote a book called What Kind of Bird Can't Fly? A Jailbird. And if you should invite him sometime to speak, because he's a tremendous human being. So people, you have to have a sense of redemption, frankly. But now to the larger issue of democracy. I am disturbed in this county that democracy is at great risk. The other day I was at a planning commission meeting, and not only was I treated hostilely by the chair, every time I tried to speak he interrupted, and when I tried to talk to the council apparently is not aware of the US Constitution. Because when you go to the microphone, there should be nobody interrupting you for your 3 minutes, because they don't know what you're trying to say. You might go up and sing a little song, and that's how you make your point. You might do a little drum thing. You might dance like a Native American. Who knows? That's your right, and nobody should ever interrupt you, because all of us who serve in government swear an oath to defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mayor Casey, those are all the comments for this item.
Okay. Well, thank you, Francisco, for that great presentation. Appreciate it. Let's move on to, general public comment. Before we do, I need to. I need to remind everyone about the manner and decorum of our meetings. Issue a warning in this regard. Meetings must be in an orderly and efficient manner without willful disruption so that the business of the city can be conducted. While the council is more than willing to listen to comments from the public, it must be done at the appropriate time and up at the podium with the microphone so that your words can be heard and recorded properly as part of the meeting. There cannot be interruption when council members are speaking or audience members calling, chanting, or yelling out. If do so, a warning will be issued. If there is too much disruption, it may be necessary to take a break or even cancel the meeting. I'd like to ask for all of your courtesy and cooperation in this regard, so it won't be necessary to take any of these steps. So this is the time for anyone in the audience to speak on any item not on the agenda and within the subject matter jurisdiction of the council. Speaker cards are available in the lobby and are to be completed and given to the city clerk before speaking. When the city clerk calls your name, please come to the podium, state your name and city for the records, and speak to the council. If you're joining us via Zoom, please click on the bottom of your screen to raise your hand. And if you're joining via Zoom using a cell phone, you can press *9. Each speaker is limited to 3 minutes with a maximum of 30 minutes per subject. And please note that state law prohibits the city council from discussing or taking action on any items not on the agenda. So, City Clerk, we have public comment.
Yes, first speaker is Andy Shaw-Corin, to be followed by Elias Salinas.
Well, surprise, surprise, that I might comment generally about the state of democracy in San Benito County. It is most seriously at risk, as it is almost everywhere in the world. And that should worry everybody, because the most radical idea the world has ever known, as Abraham Lincoln said, the government of, by, and for the people, needs to be protected at every turn. So I think I mentioned that at the Planning Commission meeting, not only was I interrupted constantly by the chair, Mr. Griffith. It's been a long day. I prepared myself for this remark. I didn't write remarks. I went out and ran 8 miles at Nicene Marks Park, feeling very good. I bathed in my pond and helped build a little wall out of adobe for about 3 hours. And I planted some plants so that, although I didn't write, I feel healthy. And we should all be able to feel healthy. We should all be able to feel safe. We should all be able to feel secure. And we should all be able to feel that we have faith that our elected representatives take their oath of office extremely seriously. I took it many times at the University of California, at the State Department of Corrections, Pajaro Valley, Anzar High when I was the chair of the school board there, numerous times. And every time I thought about it seriously and said, how do I act to make sure that the Constitution of both the state of California and the United States is put first? And that's part of why I've been engaged in initiatives, referendum, and recall, because we're a uniquely privileged state. That is, in 1910, the progressive Republicans under Hiram Johnson, probably the greatest governor this state ever had, with only the possible competition of Earl Warren, who went on to become the Chief Justice of the United States, that we gave people the right to directly create law and also to negate, that's the initiative, and also to negate law through the referendum process. And we've had the good fortune in our county of doing both. And unfortunately, sometimes elected officials have not been friendly to those efforts, and in some cases have done end runs over the decisions being made. And that, to me, is a violation of their oath of office. And that's where I'm at. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
The next speaker is Elias Salinas.
Who is this? Somehow I ended up with somebody's device here.
Oh.
I don't want to be accused of taking something that is not mine.
Okay, thank you. I was looking for that unmute. So I want to speak on the behavior and the comments that were recently made by Councilman Roland Resendez, attacking one of his fellow council members. Not just attacking, but harassing. Every time that Roland Resendez speaks out there, is speaking on him as himself as a city council person. Every time he speaks out there, he is putting the city at jeopardy for his behavior and for his comments. This time, he went on to harass Rick Perez with regard to a 290, Penal Code Section 290 register. It is against the California Penal Code section, various sections of 290, to use any information in a matter which is harassing an individual, and that is exactly what he did. So, not only did he harass an individual thinking he's high and mighty and can do all this information, but he violated the law in doing so, and in doing so has placed the city in liability for a lawsuit for that information. The information is public, but the information cannot, as a law states, be used in a manner to harass. Now, with regards to the statement that he continues to say that the individual may not hold office has already been asked and answered. But the most important thing with regards to that is the position that he holds as an employee of a school district where the students are young, almost adults that are at high risk, and some even wear ankle monitors because they are already in custody. And his words and his actions of going against Rick Perez is literally telling these young adults that their actions that have placed them where they are today, that they cannot, there's no redemption for them. So he is not putting a good example on those very people he is in charge of. Now, those statements and that behavior is going upon these young students, and my next phone call tomorrow will be to Crystal Lamonto. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mayor Casey, those are all the public comments.
Okay, I think we're going to move on then to consent agenda. Do any members of council have brief questions or comments on consent agenda items? No? Do we have any public
I
comment?
do, Madam Mayor. My apologies.
Sure, go ahead.
Thank you. I was taking notes. I would like to poll 7.3. Thank you.
Okay, if we have public comment on consent agenda items?
Yes, I just would like to,
Yes, Mayor Casey, our first
Sorry.
speaker is Mr. Shaw Corn for item 7.3.
so I also, am I speaking on that item now or just on the general issue of pulling something?
And any of the items, if you have a
Okay, so
remark on any
I'll
of them.
start with the consent agenda item regarding the tractor rally against Measure A. First of all, it may surprise you that I support a rally by farmers to oppose Measure A because I take my oath of office to protect the Constitution very seriously. And I, just on the side, I really object to the last comments, but I won't talk too much. I think we're all mosaics of good things and bad things, things that we're right about and things that we're wrong about. Everybody is. And so in some ways, an excellent teacher, in some ways, improvement needed. That's the way it goes for all of us. So on the tractor rally issue, what I would like to put it in context with is the motorcycle rally, that the people of this county voted that they wanted the motorcycle rally. And it has not been supported. And some would say that that's because it's not political. People, one objection I heard was that we shouldn't support using public funds because this is supporting a no on A. Well, that's actually missing the boat in terms of law. Actually, if you have a political agenda, you're more protected than if you don't have a political agenda, because that's your constitutional right. But though some people would say the motorcycle rally was not political, and that is so far from the truth, it's not even funny. I taught many, many motorcyclists in the prison, as they called themselves booger eaters. Not a particularly pretty figure, but it's kind of got some poetry to it. And they were political. Some of them were Nazis. Some of them were anarchists. Some of them were communists. Some of them were Native Americans. Some of them were Chicano. They had an idea. Their political point of view was they weren't real pleased with the general government structures. That was their political point of view by most of them. Some of them were Christian. Some of them were Muslim. I met all kinds. Sikhs, But it's very political. And frankly, if you decide to do a no on Measure A, frankly, if the motorcycle folks want to rally on the same day and come to Hollister, you'd be hard-pressed to say they can't, because they could say we're ambivalent about Measure A, and that's our position, and they want to rally saying, we don't know we haven't made up our mind yet, but we're ambivalent, we're still thinking about it, and they have the right. Our people, the Amamutsan who support Measure A, they might want to come and campaign for Measure A, and you couldn't stop them either, because when a rally happens, a counter rally is permissible. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mayor Casey, those are all of the comments for any of the consent items.
Okay. Are there any further comments or questions about consent, or are we ready to make a motion?
Motion to approve consent items.
You motion to approve except for 7.3. Do you have a second? Okay. All those in favor?
Yes.
Yes. All those opposed? All right.
I'm sorry, I missed the second. There was too much talking. Who was it? Thank
Yes,
you,
Mr.
Councilmember
Burns.
Burns. Thank you.
Okay, motion carries 4-0. Let's move to item 7.3, resolution approving a temporary street closure for a tractor parade. Is that? I have the staff report.
So I can speak to it.
Okay.
This is an application that we received for a street closure for October 12th. We handled it in the way that We handle all public assembly permits, including street closures, including the application was reviewed by all department heads for any conditions that needed to be set for that parade, such as making sure that there are barriers in place, what the streets to be closed are, making sure notifications go out to residents at 7 days in advance of it, and then also to making sure that we have signatures from the majority of the affected residents and businesses. All of those qualifications and requirements were met as part of the application, and then we bring it forward to the city council for your review.
Okay. Vice Mayor, you asked to pull this. Did you have questions?
I did, thank you. So my concern, as I expressed it to the city manager, is that this is for a political campaign. And my concern is that we're using public dollars to allow a political campaign happen in downtown Hollister. So, city attorney, when I had a conversation with the city manager about this, he stated that the fee that is currently on there is not the actual cost, and that he would bring an estimated cost. Generally speaking, I'm wanting to know, are we using public tax dollars to promote a political campaign or not?
So the city doesn't have a street closure policy, and it cannot stop a request for a street closure based on viewpoint or content because of First Amendment rights.
Thank you. Are we subsidizing the cost with tax-paying dollars at all?
That's for Dave.
So I can speak to that. So we're currently in the process of doing a fee study for all user fees. Currently, the fee for this is $111. So we would be going through that process where we interview all staff to see what, from the city clerk staff, from taking the application and processing it, to public works staff where they're going out and putting out the barricades, any differentials that come with that. Roughly, we would say an estimate. Any of these are typically around $1,500. So it just depends on the length of the parade and what you're closing and the barricades, the time that it's open. And so when we bring that back, typically at the policy level, we would bring the fees of what the true costs are, and then it'll ultimately be a council decision of what to set the fees at. So at some point, that fee for activities like this was set at $100, and then with the fee adjustments for inflation back in June, it took it to $111.
Thank you. So then that's helpful for me to understand that, city attorney. So essentially, they're paying a permit fee of $100, 111 to be exact. Roughly the cost, as stated by the city manager, is about $1,500. So are we then subsidizing with public dollars to promote a political campaign by approving this?
So public funds are being used for the street closure, and that you're using city staff to perform that function. So yes, and it's no different than any other street closure request that the city gets.
And does that put us in an issue of having liability?
No, there are First Amendment concerns here. As I
Okay.
stated earlier, you can't deny a permit based on viewpoint or content, and the city, again, has no policy regarding street closures.
All right. Thank you.
Do we have any other? Yes. Councilmember Burns.
Thank you. Just to add a little more context. So we have a Veterans Parade scheduled in November, and so they're going to pay the $111 fee as well. And we had a Saddle Horse Parade, and they paid $111 in the fee.
The Saddle Horse Parade may have been before the increase, so it may have been $100, but similar. Yes.
Okay. And the same thing with the Christmas Parade. So again, there's nothing that we're doing here differently than what we've done in the past or in the present, correct?
That is correct.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Do we have any other questions or comments?
I do, Madam Mayor, just one.
Yes.
Thank you. I respectfully disagree. We've never had a political campaign during campaign season, so that is something that we're doing different. And the other ones that you used are not connected to political campaigns. Thank you.
Sorry, I can't recognize you again.
I believe that I was just talking about pulling something from the agenda, and now I'm talking about the merits of this thing where I profoundly disagree with my good.
I understand that, sir. It's just you only get 1 3-minute at the consent. So
Next time.
All right, does anyone else have further questions or comments? Do we have a motion on this item?
Make a motion to approve?
Is there a second?
Second?
All those in favor?
Yes.
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 All those opposed?
No.
Motion carries 4-1. All right, we are done with consent. We will move on to item 8.1, a resolution amending the fiscal year 2024-25 user fee schedule to make minor administrative changes. Staff report, Casey.
Good afternoon, Madam Mayor, City Council members. Casey Astorga, the city's Administrative Services Director. There we go. So tonight we'll be discussing a administrative edit to the already adopted fiscal year 24-25 user fee schedule. And with that, staff's recommendation is for the City Council to hold a public hearing and adopt a resolution making minor administrative changes to that fiscal year 24-25 user fee schedule. As a bit of background, the 24-25 user fee schedule was approved by the City Council in June of 2024 via Resolution 2024-106. The administrative changes being recommended tonight are specific to the engineering division. And those changes include writing the full description of the fees, the full calculation methodology, rather than it being listed in a summary format, which is how it was proposed and adopted previously. And this change is primarily to make it clear in how the calculations are made, the methodology, how they are administered, et cetera, to make sure that all parties, both the city and then any applicant, is aware of what that fee may be. Also, it's an important last bullet point there that no other changes are being recommended to that user fee schedule at this time. And this is a summary of the proposed changes. On that top portion, you'll see the existing fee schedule where it's written in shorthand, a little tough to interpret. And that bottom chart showing the corrected schedule, much more exhaustive and descriptive in nature, including with the bottom two sections, making note that this is benchmarked to the California Government Code for the transportation permits. And then for the recording fees, that it is not a fee adopted by the city of Hollister. Instead, it is adopted by the county of San Benito. And we just wanted to highlight that in the amendments. And so essentially just a few administrative changes and nothing else tonight. And with that, I'll be open for any questions.
Do we have any questions for? Yes, Councilmember Burns.
Thank you, Mayor. Thanks for the brevity. I appreciate that. In looking at this in the staff report, when I see where the council approved the fee study in 2024, when was the fee study actually conducted?
So the full fee study, I don't have the exact date. It's usually every 5 years, and we're undertaking that process right now.
Okay.
With the expectation that we'll come back within this calendar year, the end of this calendar year, to have the results of that fee study, which then we can use the study to then adopt a subsequent fee schedule.
Okay. All right. And then I noticed in reviewing it, I thought I saw at least 2 fees that are actually being reduced. Did I see that correctly?
No, there are no changes to the fee amounts that have been previously adopted. We were just clarifying how they were.
Okay.
The state ones were because
yes.
the increase due to inflation pushed them over the state amount, so they're corrected back to the state amount.
Yes,
Okay.
that is correct. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks for the clarity. I appreciate it. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Do you have any other questions, or do we have any public comment on this item?
Yes, Mayor Casey. Andy Shaw-Corin.
And it's a public hearing, Mayor, if we could open the public
I'm
hearing.
sorry. Opening the public hearing. It is, oh gosh,
Well,
5:40.
first of all, I'd like to say that I have to apologize to my friend Roland Resendiz because, I think he depended upon me to be supportive, but in this particular case, I think technically he was wrong. There is a problem in our county in that elected officials have been, especially at the county level, siding with political agendas, and I believe, that I am free.
Mayor, this is the.
Wait, excuse me.
Excuse me, Mayor, you can stop the clock so he gets his full
Okay.
time. Okay, so this item is dealing with the fee schedule, Mayor.
So we have
Well,
to stay to the topic. If you
Excuse
can
me, I
bring it back.
I will work my way back to the fee schedule. I believe under the Constitution, if I want to stand up here and do a little song, and then at the very end say, and that's why I think the fee schedule should stay the way it was, that I have the right to do that.
As long as you bring it back to the fee
Yeah,
schedule.
exactly, and
You
that's-
can start the timer again.
And that's
Thank
my
you.
intention. I'm not lost. I know what's on the agenda. Okay, I'm pretty good at this. So I think you need to go for the maximum of every possible fee collection, because as has been discussed, we have a contentious county. This money goes into our funds, and if there are protests where the police have to come out, or there are parades where we have to have people out, then we need to have plenty of money in order to essentially perform one of the critical issues of government, which is to allow people to express themselves. And it looks like our county is going to be very busy at the city and county level for years to come, with very different opinions. And so I think we need to have a pretty good bank account for dealing with that, because otherwise we could have financial problems. So I support going for the maximum that you could possibly do by law for fees, so that you have those resources, so that other important government functions are not cut. Thank you. Did I come back to the issue? Thank you.
Do we have any other public comment?
There are no other public comments for this item.
All right, bringing it back to, all right, I'm going to close the public hearing. It's 4:42. Do we have any further comment or deliberation from council?
And Mayor, for the record, you closed the public hearing, correct?
I did.
Okay, thank you.
Is there a motion on this item?
So moved.
Do we-
Second.
Okay. All those in favor?
Yes.
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 All those opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Okay. Now we're going to move on to council business. Item 9.1, a presentation on single-use plastics. Can we have the staff report, please?
Yes, good evening, Mayor and council members. William Vi, Public Works Director. The one correction first to the staff report. In my staff report, I mentioned that San Benito County had adopted an ordinance. It's San Juan Bautista, the city of San Juan Bautista had adopted a plastics ordinance. Tonight we have Catherine Ramirez with Integrated Waste Management staff, who will then introduce Monica Abonce, and they will give the presentation on this item.
Good evening, Mayor, council members, and staff. Thank you for having us here. My name is Catherine Ramirez, and I am staff analyst with Integrated Waste Management. It's with great pleasure that I introduce our Integrated Waste Recycling and Resource Recovery Coordinator, Monica Abonce. She is a Hollister High graduate who went off to American University and came back to her community to work and give and help grow the county of San Benito and the city of Hollister. Monica began research on plastic pollution and legislation for her college capstone project in the fall of 2020. She reached out to San Benito County Integrated Waste Management for a discussion and guidance in advocating for the adoption of a single-use plastic reduction ordinance in Hollister. That's when she became our intern and rose up the ranks to the recycling coordinator. She's done a great deal of great things. Monica presented to your council in May of 2021, and then in September of 2021, and again in March of 2022, presenting her findings on the dangers of plastic pollution, actions being taken by other Monterey Bay area jurisdictions, and a recommendation of a 3-phase ordinance approach to reduce single-use plastic in Hollister that included Phase 1, single-use plastic bag ban and disposable bag charge. Phase 2, plastic cup ban and disposable cup charge. And Phase 3, reusable dine-in foodware and compostable to-go foodware. And without further ado, I'd like to introduce you to Monica.
All right. Good evening, Council. Like Catherine mentioned, my name is Monica Abonce. I'm the Recycling Coordinator with Integrated Waste Management. And at the City's request, I am here today to provide a presentation on a potential sustainable and reusable food serviceware ordinance. Do I change the slides? Oh, There we go. Okay. So this slide shares a summary of my prior presentations to the City Council regarding a plastic reduction ordinance. Like Catherine mentioned, I first came out to the City Council on May 17th of 2021, during which I focused on presenting about the dangers of single-use plastic on human health, animal health, and to the health of our environment. I shared information on the actions being taken by cities in our area, such as San Juan Bautista, Watsonville, Morgan Hill, and Seaside. IWM received direction from the council to collect feedback from local businesses that would be impacted by these changes. So then I came back on September 20th, 2021, with a follow-up presentation providing further detail on what a potential ordinance for Hollister could look like. So during this presentation, I presented on what a phased implementation approach could look like. The 3 suggested phases were, again, like Catherine mentioned, targeted plastic bags at the retail stores, single-use plastic cups, and single-use plastic to-go-ware at restaurants, along with encouraging reusables for dine-in. I also shared the survey results we received from an initial focus group of businesses. We surveyed 25 local businesses, and then the council advised that we collect more data from a larger pool of businesses. And so then I returned on March 21st, 2022, once more. During this presentation, I focused on the resources that IWM had available to local businesses to help them transition away from plastic, as well as the additional survey results. So in total, we were able to survey 75 businesses. This included retail and food service sector businesses. 15 of these businesses were Spanish-speaking and 60 were English. And to our pleasant surprise, the results showed a majority of these businesses were in favor of making sustainable changes in their operations, as long as the proper resources and technical assistance was made available. And another important date to note that I have listed on this slide is the adoption of SB 54 coming in January of 2025. I will be going into more detail on this state law later in my presentation. So in all 3 of my presentations, I touched on how a sustainable foodware ordinance aligns with the city's general plan in reducing waste. In the city's draft climate action plan, the action to develop and adopt a reusable foodware ordinance that requires the use of reusable foodware when dining on site at restaurants and the use of compostable or recyclable foodware containers for carryout orders is included. And IWM is happy to support the city to ensure this ordinance aligns with the current and upcoming state laws. We can also provide technical assistance to local businesses and city staff. And with ordinances like these being implemented all throughout the state, businesses are facing similar challenges. And we've already begun having conversations with other jurisdictions regarding best practices and common challenges that businesses are facing. And we intend and hope to bring back that knowledge here for our local business community. The city's plan also includes actions to adopt and implement programs that reduce the amount of materials entering the solid waste stream. A sustainable foodware ordinance will complement this goal, as one of the most prevalent outcomes of sustainable foodware ordinances is a reduction of single-use plastic waste. And after more recent researching of several ordinances around the state, we would like to propose a couple ideas that we feel would be good to include in a potential foodware ordinance here. We continue to encourage the phased approach with 3 separate implementation dates. All these changes are important, but making all of them at the same time can be difficult and costly for businesses. And so through a phased approach, we hope to alleviate some of these difficulties. So in the first phase, we recommend focusing on a push for paper bags and encouraging shoppers to bring their own bags. Many businesses are already doing this, but it's the first step that can maybe be the easier step to take. The second phase, we suggest aiming it at reducing single-use cups and encouraging businesses to offer for here reusable option, as well as promoting bringing personal cups. And the third and final phase, we suggest focus on specifically restaurants serving food on reusables for customers that are dining on site and using fiber-based compostable materials when orders are to go. We also recommend that any language that is used in an ordinance is consistent with state recycling laws, specifically the language that's used in SB 54, which will change what materials are considered recyclable and what materials are considered compostable. And again, we also want to emphasize the importance of switching to reusable materials whenever possible, and especially for dine-in. We feel that this should be the main focus throughout the entire ordinance, as reusables are always the most sustainable and the best way to reduce waste. And as for some additional consideration, these changes will come with a lot of challenges for businesses, and it is important to have assistance available. Businesses can benefit from education, such as flyers and signage, to educate their customers as well as their staff. We can support with the development of these resources, and education and positive reinforcement should always be the primary focus over enforcement. Financial assistance to local businesses may also be a possibility through integrated waste management. Our team is currently exploring funding opportunities. Funding could be used to alleviate the cost of switching to reusables and environmentally friendly products. We also recommend leaving room in the regulations for temporary exemptions as determined necessary. As these sustainable foodware ordinances are still relatively new throughout the state, and it can be difficult to get a hold of some of the alternatives that the ordinances require. And to reduce the need for enforcement and support business compliance, the city can also make the compliance a requirement to obtain or renew business license or building permits. And I'd also like to say that we're not the first jurisdiction to implement these changes, nor the first to overcome these challenges. And so these considerations we put together after research, and we feel that they're the best practices throughout the state, and we feel that they can make implementing these changes easier for businesses. And so now moving on to SB 54. This is a new state law that will bring a lot of changes to single-use materials throughout the state. These changes will begin to go into effect at the beginning of the upcoming year in 2025. It is a very extensive bill, but to summarize it, some of the goals include reducing the volume of plastic and other packaging, increasing recycling, shifting packaging pollution responsibility to the producers instead of the consumers, and shifting the cost of local jurisdiction and ratepayers to the producers, creating consistent recycling programs statewide, and also creating funding for pollution mitigation in disadvantaged communities. So it is a lot going on in that bill. And like I mentioned, it is a very extensive bill with various deadlines, but by 2032, with all the new changes, the state of California should have 25% less total plastic packaging and foodware in our waste streams, and 65% of that single-use plastic will be properly and effectively recycled, and 100% of packaging and single-use plastic foodware will be either recyclable or compostable. So this being said, a sustainable foodware ordinance would align very well with these upcoming changes, and some jurisdictions in California are actually developing a model ordinance that aligns with the SB 54 and should become available very, very soon. And as for next steps, we'd like to identify what the council's priorities in a sustainable and reusable foodware ordinance are, and the steps needed to meet the City of Hollister's General Plan 2040 goals. We'd also like to present the model ordinance to the City Council when it becomes available. And finally, we'd like to return to the Council with a proposed ordinance as well as an outreach plan. And that concludes my presentation.
Thank you very much. Do we have any questions for? Yes, Councilmember Morales. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Councilmember Morales. Yeah, just questions for. We'll do comments after.
Sorry. When you talked about when you did a survey with the businesses that they were open to, they were supportive if there were adequate resources and technical support. Can you tell us a little bit more? And do you have copies of those town hall or listening sessions?
Yeah. So it was a survey, like a Google survey. And so we went around town either like in person or online. It was available online. And we do have the survey results. I think they were included in the agenda. But if not, I can definitely share them.
And the reason why I ask is because in other jurisdictions, similar attempts were made in like other government facilities where the in-service like restaurants were required as part of their contract to have the majority of what you talked about with a subsidy. And they were still unsuccessful because of the cost. And so as we're looking at a policy, it would be really important to understand like the various costs, resources that our businesses would need, or whether it be government, whatever we're targeting, to really have a clear understanding of what those potential resources, if there are going to be required subsidies, what money is available, or if we're making these requirements and they're unsustainable because of the cost and the impact, at least in other areas, they basically had to shut their doors.
Yeah.
So I'm not saying that would be the outcome in San Benito County or the city of Hollister. What I'm saying is that it'd be really important to make sure that we are very clear to understand the resource that is going to be required for these businesses to be able to either pass down the cost to the consumer or be able to have the adequate funding to be able to purchase the cost of these materials because they're extremely expensive.
Yeah, and there are studies that are being done like in other jurisdictions where sometimes it does result in cost savings. It definitely is cost up front for a lot of businesses, like, purchasing reusables and whatnot, but hopefully through the use of reusables, it will bring down the cost of needing to buy the single-use stuff.
And why I say the cost of the reusable is that it's labor hours. So it's going to require labor to wash those reusables. And just to be very clear, I'm 100% in favor and in support. I just want to make sure that we do our due diligence in exploring this policy because it has in other places, the vision and the want is there from everybody. It's when it comes to the implementation where things don't go the way that, policymakers wanted it to go. So I'd hate for us to kind of go the same route that other places have gone.
Right.
We don't have the resources that other places had, but we definitely don't want to see a negative impact.
Right, yeah, and lucky for us, like you mentioned, a lot of the challenges are, have already been faced by a lot of other jurisdictions, and so hopefully we can learn from them and see, what works best and what doesn't, and there are definitely similar jurisdictions of our size that are doing these changes, so hopefully we can learn from them as well.
And I think if you have capacity, I'd be very interested to know, like, when people talk about resources and for there to be costing out of whether it be labor, whether the cost of just if policy were to be placed, for there to be a thorough analysis, even if it's on one business, so that there's a clear delineation of those costs, whether it be not only the cost of the purchasing the materials, but the labor cost, and also the impact that it will have on the cost to the consumer, because that's another challenge as well.
Yeah, there actually are some reports that have already been done with all the details that you just mentioned. Okay, yeah, we can definitely do something like that.
Okay. Did you have any questions? Councilmember Burns.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a couple. Has the California League of Cities weighed in on this statewide? Do we know what their position on this would be?
Has the California what?
California League of Cities.
I'm not sure if they have.
Okay. I'm not sure if they have, but we can do research and send that out if they have or not.
Because, again, I'm very supportive, but I think there should be a best practice and there should be standard. This should be a fairly standardized thing in my mind. And then I guess my other question would be, I know you spoke of 15 and then or 75 businesses that you weighed in on or you polled. Were any of them big businesses, for example, like the supermarkets or the like Target, and how did they react? And I know that often when you go to one of those places, if you get plastic, they ding you a dime a bag, and I was under the impression that money was collected to use to help solve the problem, but I don't know that to be truthful, and. I'd be curious with the United Grocers Association, who represents most of the labor unions for the big markets. I'd be curious what their position on it is. And I don't think we have to really dig too deep. I think that they should probably have issued some positional papers on this already. But in the event you don't already have that information.
Yeah, well, the survey included. We tried to really be wide with the businesses we surveyed, so we definitely did include like the larger chain grocery stores as well as the smaller ones. With the larger ones, it sometimes is easier to implement these changes because they're already seeing them in other cities, so it's just a matter of contacting, like the headquarters. But we do not have like an official stand from, you mentioned the League of Grocers, we do not have like an official stand from them.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mayor.
Yes. Vice Mayor, do you have questions?
Yeah, thank you. It's good to see you. Thank you, Monica, for coming back, and thank you for your presentation. So I don't know, were you guys the ones that helped San Juan Bautista implement their program?
Yes.
Okay. And like in terms of support, what is it that you offer to help them implement, and what have you heard back from them?
Yeah, so it's a lot of technical assistance, so going out in person and like educating them, and we develop signage for them. Yeah, it was a lot of, going out, talking to them personally, kind of explaining what the changes would look like. So that is what we do. We did offer, the Green Business Program, which sometimes has additional funding, which a lot of businesses in San Juan did go ahead and become certified. But that was another way that we offered help.
And have you gotten any feedback back from the business owners in San Juan Bautista
about
this?
It's hard. It's hard when we implemented these changes. It was during the COVID impact, so it was really difficult. But I think now it's definitely becoming a lot more, the businesses are definitely a lot more in compliance than they were at the beginning.
I just want to let you know that I provide support at their events that they have. And so what we do is when somebody is doing an event like the Rib Fest or whatnot, we provide the vendor with the single-use food ordinance and preferably that they do not sell plastic bottles on the street, the vendors. And we've had really good compliance with that. And we're not fining them. We're just educating them. And I personally am going to all of the events, and I wear my orange safety vest, and I let them know that this is by order of the city council. And they're good with it. And we have about 80% support with this. So thank you for asking.
Yeah, thank you. And then I'm just going to assume that you're going to provide the same type of support for us if we decide to adopt a resolution.
I'd be happy to.
Okay. And then my other question, Monica, it's been a while since we last saw you. Like, why? I remember, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, that everybody was in support of this. What happened? How come we haven't adopted a resolution? Why haven't we seen you in a while?
Yeah, well, I think last time I came, the council was willing to adopt an ordinance with further research and more feedback from businesses, and just with, the load of work being so busy. And so we decided to try and focus maybe on San Juan Bautista and see, what challenges we faced there, and then eventually come back to Hollister. And so here we are now.
Okay, that makes sense. And then I got one more question. You said that you're going to come back, or you're going to look for a resolution. I would assume that like San Juan Bautista, all of these other communities already have a resolution. So can we just use one of their resolutions, and how soon can you provide it to us?
Yeah, so specifically I mentioned like a model ordinance for SB 54. So the language or the definitions of what's recyclable is going to change a little bit. So we're hoping to wait until, the other jurisdictions have that model ordinance available, and hopefully implement that here so that it aligns with all the SB 54 changes.
Okay, thank you.
And generally, just so I add a little bit, generally the state, when they pass something like this, they supply the model ordinance of what it needs to look like, and then you can tweak it a little bit to make it fit your jurisdiction. So you're not starting from scratch, and then you make sure that your ordinance meets the standards of the state.
Thank you. I do have one more question. Couldn't we just adopt one now and then replace that one with a future one?
Yeah, I mean, we probably could, but by the time we got one together, the model ordinance is going to be out January of 2025.
Got it.
So by the time we did it, we just have to start over.
Got it. Thank you.
Yes, Councilmember Burns.
Thank you. I guess generated another question for me. Clearly, there's an enforcement component to this, no matter when it happens and the words that are chosen. But I think as a city, we need to try and figure out what that means for the city too, as far as, is it something, I just don't see our police department responding to things of this nature, maybe code enforcement, but we need to figure that piece out as well. And I don't know, city manager, has there been any conversations about that? Because it's one thing to enact an ordinance, but if you really don't have the intent to enforce, then it really puts everybody in a very difficult situation.
Yeah, we brought this back as, a high-level discussion to reintroduce the topic at the request of, I believe, Councilmember Perez. So we haven't dug into the implications of what it would cost for code enforcement, those type of things. We wanted to bring this forward, let them present.
Gotcha.
And then
Thank you.
take it from next step.
Thank
And
you,
then
Mayor.
I do have just an update on League of Cities. So Senate Bill 54 was first introduced in 2018, so there's basically 4 tries at it. And so this is the way it's represented on their site, was a compromise. The bill was a compromise bill that brought together local governments, waste haulers, environmental organizations, and business groups to address the increasing fiscal and environmental costs associated with recycling, single-use products and packaging. So it looks like a lot of work together to get it across the finish line. So a lot of compromise.
If I may, we definitely understand that there will be an enforcement component of this, but we would like an opportunity when you do pass this that we can do some education and outreach, and that's what we've been doing in San Bautista for the last year. And it does take that long because we're changing behaviors, and so, but we're definitely supportive of that when the time comes.
Great. So thank you for that. I just one question about San Juan Bautista, because I know some of the restaurants are struggling. So I'm wondering what pushback you might receive as far as cost, the cost of using the compostable materials or other. I'm just wondering what feedback, if there's been any.
Well, in San Juan Bautista, their ordinance actually allows for recyclable material. So that's what we're seeing in a lot of the businesses. So I don't know if there has been any specific pushback towards the ordinance, just because, it's recyclable material. The compostable ones can be kind of difficult, but recyclable is pretty easy to get hold of.
So their takeout, like their pizza place or their other places, they wouldn't supply materials then? I mean, it's
I'm sorry.
different. You can't use reusable if you're taking it out.
Yeah, so
right?
for
So
reusable,
I guess that's what I'm.
Yeah, so the to-go-ware for in the San Juan Bautista ordinance allows for recyclable material. So that material is not nearly as costly as like the compostable material, which is seen in some ordinances.
So recyclable as in plastic.
Recyclable cardboard, that as well, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, gotcha. All right. Thank you so much. Appreciate the presentation. Do we have public comment on this?
Yes, Mayor Casey. First speaker is Andy Shawcorn.
Who the hell is he? Excuse me. So this is a wonderful idea, but it has its shortcomings. And the shortcomings are that you may know that I've been involved in the issue of petroleum products, battling them for a long time, starting with Measure J. But it goes way, way back further than that, about concerns about plastics, because I was originally a marine biologist, a highest honors graduate at the University of California, and these plastics, every plastic we create ultimately ends up in the ocean. All of them, even the ones that we put in our landfill, because as the saying goes, every mountain ends up in the sea. That's what happens to mountains. They eventually get washed into the sea, and all the plastic that we have in them, because it's perpetual, it never breaks down, it will eventually end up in the ocean. And here's the problem. This nice little Union pouch that I love having, it feels, that's kind of like what used to be made out of leather.
Can you talk into the mic so we can record you?
I have a pretty loud voice. It's made out of plastic. My clothes are made out of plastic. My sunglasses are made out of plastic. Although these look like moccasins, they're made out of plastic. So my whole life is made out of plastic. Your seats are made out of plastic. And it all washes down to the ocean. The plastic bags, when they wash down, animals mistake them for jellyfish. And so whales, birds, albatrosses out 1,000 miles away die as their stomachs fill with plastic bags. But worse than that, the major source of plastic in the ocean is these little microplastics that actually affect our health. Most people don't know that they come from the tires that we drive around, So if you really want to reduce the plastic that's most dangerous, you find ways to get people out of their cars, because every time you ride your car, your tire wears out a little bit, and it all washes down the drainage and down into the ocean, and then it affects the endocrine balance of all these creatures out there, and we end up with a degraded world. So we need to actually think a little differently. We need to start getting people to think, how do we embrace the idea of being more ecological? How do we finance that? One way you should all look at is there's an effort regionally to create a public bank. Monterey County and San Benito County are actively involved in it. You can reach out, but nobody in this county is involved at all. That could potentially fund efforts to get involved in improving things. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, our next speaker is Jackie Castorena Davila.
Oh, hello.
Go ahead, we can hear you.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Hi, my name is Jackie Castorena, and I'm actually a consultant that works with Integrated Waste Management to run the Green Business Program. And we've also aided Monica and Selena in their efforts to get ordinances passed. One of the great things about our consulting company is that we actually have a lot of experience in different areas, whether it's in the Monterey Bay area or in the San Francisco Greater Bay Area with foodware ordinances. So a lot of the questions and difficulties that you mentioned, we've gone through. So we can advise in terms of what we can do better. Me personally, I have helped Watsonville and Seaside with their foodware ordinances and what it really takes to, get the businesses to comply. Because as you all mentioned, it can be really difficult for the small businesses who may be struggling from day to day, and the compostable products are more expensive. So, having the manpower to have to wash more dishes. So there's a lot of things, like you mentioned, that go into making this decision. But one thing I want to make sure that you're all aware of, SB 54 is coming to us, to all of us, just like a recently signed law that now completely bans plastic bags. So one of the things that I want to have you all understand is that by having this foodware ordinance, it's actually just helping local governments, the city of Hollister, really align with a lot of the state laws that have already passed. So it would be great to pass this and make sure that the ordinance aligns with what compostable and recyclable products are going to be available. So even though we're talking about, how expensive they are or compared to the conventional or even styrofoam, we will get to a point where styrofoam will no longer be available to purchase in the state of California. We're just getting ahead of that, and we want to make sure that we focus this ordinance to the resources that will help the businesses, as you all mentioned. And those resources, from what I've learned, is definitely the education, just like Catherine does in San Juan Bautista, and making sure that they understand why these laws were passed, how we can help, if there's any funding available that will help them make the switch. But also that I heard when I was helping the city with the surveys was that they are willing to comply as long as we make sure that we enforce on the big guys, like the fast food chains, the ones that have the money, making sure that they are also going to make these changes and are not going to get away with continuing their practices. So touching a little bit on enforcement, we've seen different forms of enforcement in different cities. A lot of the time there's where people can report, but things we can discuss.
Thank you.
And those are all the public comments for this item.
Okay. Do we have any further discussion or deliberation? Yes, Vice Mayor.
Thank you. So it sounds like it might be a little bit of a complicated issue. Maybe not. I don't know. But however, it sounds like our hands are kind of tied until after we get the draft ordinance in January. So I would suggest that you come back after then. That would be my suggestion to you. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments?
Thank you for coming out. I knew the 2025 thing was coming out from you guys. That is my favorite committee.
Sure, Michael.
There it is. That's my favorite committee because we're doing not something just for the people, but for our environment, and to me that's exciting. Thank you for all the work you do.
All right. Any other comments? No, well, thank you so much. I appreciate the presentation.
Thank you.
All right, we're going to move on to item 9.2. Consider the formation of a Joint Powers Authority, JPA, to oversee the fire district feasibility study. Can we have a staff report, please? Chief.
There we go. Good evening, Madam Mayor and Council. Jonathan Goulding, Fire Chief. Before you tonight is a request that the Fire Protection Advisory Committee members be authorized to engage in conversations about forming a Joint Powers Authority to oversee the exploration of a fire district. Our current Fire Protection Advisory Committee was reformed specifically for this purpose. The committee members as well as staff have put together an RFP to explore the fire district. The city of San Juan Bautista is facilitating that RFP. But during the conversations, a recommendation was made to form a JPA in order to oversee this process. On August 1st, the Fire Protection Advisory Committee members approved a motion recommending the formation of the JPA, recommending taking the formation of a JPA back to their individual jurisdictions. On August 27th, the San Benito County Board of Supervisors approved the consideration of the formation of a JPA for fire services to define the goals of what a JPA would look like. And then on September 10th, the City of San Juan Bautista City Council received a report on the idea of forming a JPA. They also received a sample agreement from Livermore Pleasanton Fire Department. They did not take a formal action, but they did receive a report from the city manager on that. So to simplify all this, what we're asking tonight is to authorize the Fire Protection Advisory Committee members to discuss the terms of creating a Fire Services Joint Powers Authority, specifically to oversee this fire district exploration process. So far, the conversations surrounding the JPA have been very general. This would allow the committee members to discuss them more in depth, what it would look like, how it would function, and what authority it would have. And then the product of those discussions would come back to each jurisdiction to ultimately approve or deny the Joint Powers Authority. So that's what's before you this evening, and I'm willing to take any questions you have.
Yes, do we have any questions from? Yes, Councilmember Burns.
Thank you. Just to be clear, I thought I heard you say the purpose of this request is to simply oversee the process that would lead to a potential future conversation where the different jurisdictions would either say yes or no to a JPA?
Yeah, so this is just essentially empowering the committee members to actually engage in the conversation. That was the original request, so that at the Fire Protection Advisory Committee, they can actually discuss what that JPA would actually look like, what they felt that would be appropriate for this. And the JPA is intended to only oversee the exploration of the fire district, not the fire service in general, just that portion of it. So that's what we're asking tonight, is to allow them to engage in that conversation. And then ultimately, you're correct, whatever's decided in that group would come back before it was enacted, at the committee, before there was any JPA formed or not formed.
Thank you, Chief. Appreciate it.
Any other comments or questions? Do we have public comment on this?
Yes, Mayor Casey. Andy Shaw-Corin.
As they said in the Planet of the Apes, where there's fire, there's smoke. And we have a serious problem in this region with fire. The Amamutsan and other Native Americans long understood that this state was super subject to dangerous fires, and they managed the land to keep flammables down. And the best way to manage it, it turns out, is to encourage the native game. The particular one that's best at reducing fire risk is elk. And we have elk in our county. And one of the battles that's going on in our county is how do we make sure that we keep a healthy wildlife corridor so that the elk population can work its way as far west as it can cross over and Dr. Rick Landman, who is an expert on the elk and an expert on the beavers in this area, should come in and speak to you, because right now your group should speak out to Monterey County, because it turns out that Monterey County, right at the Red Barn, is imperiling the future of the elk population, because the Red Barn, they want to turn it into an event center right next to the wildlife crossing, right next to the Rocks Ranch that has been purchased, that's supposed to be perpetually protected so that where both elk and mountain lion can cross. So that's an important issue. And in order for your JPA to actually be insightful enough to be doing a good job, you should include public participants in your JPA, not just members of the agencies. JPAs can have public participants that can bring other insights. So I would suggest some of the land trusts, some of the universities, because right now what's going on with many of the people in this county is they're being denied insurance entirely, and that's going on all over the state. I've been paying for insurance for 30 years at my place on Cole Road, and they told us after we've never had a fire, and now suddenly they're saying, sorry, you don't have fire insurance anymore. Now that's not a problem for me because I've paid off my mortgage, but it means that anybody who wants to build in places like Strata Verde or any of the hills, they're not going to find fire insurance because the big insurance companies are no longer going to insure them. Don't trust me, look it up, you'll find that that's the truth. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
The next public speaker is Elias Salinas.
Thank you. This is a very important subject where it entails that everybody needs to get involved in this. And this all started, obviously, for the fact that there's a contract, and I agree that everybody should be able to pay for their own, whatever the cost is, that should be it. But don't lose sight of the fact that this is an essential public safety that you have the duty to provide. That is your responsibility, is the public safety. And so I think what Andy mentioned about having maybe the colleges and some people with some real experience in what's going on out there, I think is a great idea. But don't lose sight of the fact that you need the participation of all three, and all three municipalities have been getting along until this issue was just taken out of proportion. So please continue moving forward to have something come to fruition when it comes to, more than anything, is the fire district. We in San Benito County need the fire protection. I'm out at Richmart, and we get calls out here with the fire department and the ambulance plenty of times because this is a 55 and over community. We're going to have San Juan Oaks. San Juan Oaks is going to be a 55 and over, but San Juan Oaks is going to build a fire station out there. Unfortunately, they weren't asked to build it first, or actually they could have built it first and then build the housing out there. But either way, the county does use a large volume of the fire services. And so it would be required to go ahead and compensate for what is being used, but don't use that. And I'm speaking to not all of you, but some of you are trying to use that as the upper hand and saying, well, we're going to cancel you out. We're not going to be without fire protection. That's not what's going to happen in San Benito County. But what we do need is we need all three municipalities to work together as a team and not other people pushing buttons and trying to say this, that, or the other against each other. I think this is a great idea, and I think it'll be very successful once everybody works together. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mayor Casey, those are all the comments for this item.
Okay, bringing it back for further discussion. Vice Mayor.
Thank you. How much is it going to cost us?
So So at this point, there is no fiscal impact because this is just the discussion. We wouldn't be able to give a fiscal impact until we had the discussion and looked at what it was actually going to entail.
So we're going to authorize you to form a JPA.
No. The request is to authorize our committee members to engage in the conversation. Each party, San Juan Bautista, the county, and the city of Hollister are going back to their jurisdictions to get the authorization to begin to discuss it. So all we're doing is opening a conversation about it.
I was under the understanding that we're going to give you the authorization to form a JPA for them to explore the option to form a JPA.
No, we're not forming the JPA first. This is for the Fire Protection Advisory Committee that's already formed
Yes.
and operating, for them to have a conversation of whether or not a JPA would make sense to be formed to oversee the exploration of a fire district. So at this
Okay.
point, we're not forming anything. We're
Okay.
just having the conversation.
Okay, good to know. Thank you, because I thought that was a little redundant, and I wanted to know what the cost was going to be to the taxpayers. Number two, in your report, it says that the city of San Juan Bautista took no action. They had concerns. What concerns did they have, and why did they not take action?
I don't recall saying that there was concerns. They were briefed concerning this item, but they didn't have concerns. They just received a report from the city manager, but they didn't take any official action one way or the other.
Got it. Okay. But San Benito County Board of Supervisors did vote in favor.
They
of this
formally
item.
voted in favor of having the discussion, yes.
Got it. Thank you.
Any other comments? So I just want to say, to clarify, I chair the Fire Protection Committee, and the thinking behind even exploring the JPA option is because there's been a discussion about forming a district for, I think, 10 years now. And the idea was if we structured something like that, we could focus in and maybe actually move forward. So, but this is just about the discussion because we wanted to make sure we had the okay from our various agencies before we went ahead with that. And then from there, it would come back once we had more structure on it for each agency to weigh in and vote officially. Do I got that right?
Yeah, absolutely. Basically, the committee members, before they went down the road of getting too deep into it, want to make sure their jurisdictions were even open to the idea, and that's why we're here.
Great. City Manager, did you want to add anything? We're good?
No, I think everything's been covered.
Okay. Then is there a motion to approve this item?
Motion to approve?
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Yes.
Yes.
All those opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
All right, item 9.3, a discussion related to potential amendments to Chapter 2.04 of the Municipal Code to update the Council Code of Conduct. Can we have the staff report, please?
Yes, Mayor and Council. So our office is working on revising the Council Code of Conduct pursuant to council direction. And we just need further direction. So what occurred before was council had expressed interest in modifying the Code of Conduct to impose financial penalties on city council members who violate closed session confidentiality, and then to impose a requirement that council member investigations be paid from council member discretionary funds. We have a proposed revision to the disclosure of confidential information. In the staff report that's highlighted in red, it says members who disclose confidential information without proper legal authorization may be subject to those sanctions described in section 2.04.030 of the municipal code. Those sanctions include the ability to be appointed as mayor pro tem or vice mayor, losing other privileges such as loss of travel, the loss of the ability to allocate use of discretionary funds, and then also the financial penalties that were added with the last round of updates to or revisions to the Council Code of Conduct, which includes a monetary fine The first disciplinary action is $100. The second disciplinary action is $200. The third is $500, and then additional disciplinary actions are $500, as stated in the current version of that code. With respect to council member investigations, we understand that the council would like discretionary funds to be used to pay for these. So if a council member requests an investigation, and even if one allegation is sustained, our understanding is the city council would like the investigation.
Well, I had no idea that this was going to come up today. It looks like we've come full circle to First Amendment rights. This is the most damning assault on First Amendment and freedom of speech that I've ever seen in any, and I've served on many governing bodies of unions, of school boards. This really underscores what Mark Twain said about school boards, which I think applies to almost every governing body. Mark Twain said, "First God created the idiot. That was for practice. And then he created the school board." Well, that could be applying, unfortunately, to this body today, in that not only is this not going to stop bad behavior, because it'll just irritate people and make them push harder to get their point of view across, and then they'll bring in more people and there'll be more disruption, and all that is legal, and all of it is protected by the First Amendment. And so you go down this circle, this cycle, where you're going to get people more and more angry as they defend their champions in these issues, and you're going to have longer and longer meetings, because no council ever has done anything like this in the state, where they actually sanction people for their freedom of speech. Further, you'll have major organizations like the ACLU breathing down your neck as they, and I say breathing down their neck, I think they're wonderful people. I'm a member of the ACLU myself. And when I get my law degree soon, it's been recommended by the Center for Biological Diversity that I complete my law degree at Stanford, and I probably can do it in about a year, because they say my experience qualifies for it. When I come back as a Stanford-educated ACLU attorney, I plan on suing you all. And I will win, and you will end up paying me, and it will come out of the coffers of the taxpayers. And that is sad. I mean, I'll enjoy it. It'd be nice to have some extra spending money, but I don't think that's the best solution at this point. I think you need to actually figure out how to learn how to respect each other than thinking that you can get it by punishment. Because I think it was Anatole France who said, "Distrust all in whom the instinct to punish is strong." Thank you.
Thank you.
Those are all the public comments for this item.
All right, let's bring it back for some discussion. Does anyone have any comments? Yes, Councilmember Burns.
Thank you, Mayor. So in response to council's question, when a council member doesn't have adequate funds in their discretionary funds, I would presume it could just roll into the next year's fiscal funds. Assuming now that still creates a quandary. For example, if the council member is termed out or doesn't get reelected, but at that point I think you just simply have to forgive that and it'll be what it is. But that would be my recommendation. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Any other comments? Councilmember Morales.
Yeah, I'm in support of that. I think that's a really good idea. I think my other comment, and just listening to the great comments that we've heard all day today, there is a high risk and liability when there is really bad intention and causes great community harm, when somebody intentionally coordinates or shares information that's not true. And I think when looking at behavior, there's many people in our community that are well versed in cognitive behavioral interventions and models that try to address in good ways how to address the behavior. I think we are at I think the City Council has been very creative in looking at the various ways. And, even in other places like, unions, for example, they have bylaws that deal with member-to-member complaints where they do have an investigation and trial. Because there is a right to freedom of speech, but there's also a right where you cannot cause intentional harm to other people for your own personal gain. And so there needs to be a clear balance. So I think that's a great idea, Councilmember Burns, and I support that.
The only thing I want to add, because I think it was spelled out a little bit, but I want to just touch on it, is there have been some breaches of confidential information leaked out from closed session. And I just want to point out that that's actually illegal. It's a Brown Act violation. And according to what I've read in the law, they actually have penalties where injunctions can be brought. And I think the fine is something like $1,000. So I don't think us looking at this here is necessarily out of line with that. I have great concerns because of some of the information that's been leaked and also distorted as to what was actually, spoken about. So it is something we need to stop. People need to feel comfortable in discussing, things like lawsuits or labor negotiations without thinking it's going to be leaked out to the public and or distorted. It's something we have to, feel like we're secure in what we're doing. So that's a big concern for me. As far as the other, it is a little complicated, the idea of the fees and charging. I do know that these investigations have, they can be costly, and I understand trying to keep that out of the general fund and not draining the funds over these investigations. So I'm kind of got mixed feelings about it, but that's all I wanted to say.
Madam Mayor.
Yes.
Thank you. So I do think that this is a violation of the First Amendment speech rights. And I do think that most people are very well versed and aware of what the First Amendment speech rights are. So if you're going to sit here and say that people are taking information and misconstruing it or putting it out, that, in my opinion, and I would assume in the city attorney's opinion, is not a violation of the First Amendment rights. I think that the way that this council has overly heavily handed at and acted with the code of conduct, in particular towards me, is because I've been critical of the council. And it is to silence my voice. And that is not acceptable. That should not be tolerated. And it won't be, and it hasn't been, certainly not by me. And I can tell you that when you talk to the public, they believe the same thing. And if you don't believe me now, then we'll see what happens in November. Thank you.
Any other comments? Okay. Let's see, is there anyone who wants to make a motion on this item?
I don't need a motion on this item, just direction. And I heard from at least two saying it can, with respect to discretionary funds, that can roll into the next year's funds if still in office. Okay, I see a third. Yeah, go ahead.
And when we bring it back, we'll put language in there because that's assuming that it gets adopted in the budget. So we'll put language in there that gives a little bit of flexibility there as well, because at that point, the budget is not yet adopted. So.
All right, so you'll bring this back, then we don't need to vote on this item. Item 9.4 is a letter to California Assembly Speaker Robert Rivas regarding the Highway 25 project. May we have the staff report?
Thank you, Mayor. So at our September 3rd meeting, the COG Executive Director, who is here, Ms. Benu Abraham, gave a presentation on the Highway 25 expansion project. We did receive at the end of the meeting consensus to draft a letter to the Assembly member requesting support and funding for the expansion of State Highway 25, specifically from San Felipe here in Hollister to the interchange in Gilroy at 101. And so we've prepared a letter, which is watermark draft for your consideration this evening. Basically, the letter asks for funding. It also asks for consideration on how the state, through their Office of Planning and Research, if they can consider alternative evaluation methods for the vehicle miles traveled methodology, as required by Senate Bill 743 for rural counties such as San Benito County. In speaking with Director Abraham, that is a conversation that is happening at the state level, so we're asking for support there. We do also touch on the traffic impacts as requested, and so we did have Chief Reynoso was able to secure CHP crash data from 2022 for that particular segment, and since the beginning of 2022 to the publication of this report, there was 390 collisions, including 9 fatalities, with 2 occurring in August alone, which was shortly before we had the discussion. So we do highlight that as well, and we do point out that the county is a self-help county with Measure G funding, and so we're asking for support there, as well as we do tie it back to the potential impacts of the state-imposed regional housing needs allocation requirements. So when it's all coupled together, we wanted to point all of that out as well and ask for consideration and for funding.
Thank you.
That's the end of our report.
Do we have any questions on this item? Yes, Vice Mayor.
Thank you. Thank you for your report. Mr. City Manager, when I spoke to you over the weekend, I asked for you to look at, and I don't know if COG Director Binu can chime in, is there a specific committee that we can get this letter to that is making the decision on, I guess, 2 things, Binu and City Manager. Number 1, the funding, and number 2, the VMTs. So instead of just putting this on somebody's desk for it to sit there, can we actually get on the agenda and put it on these committees and have them look at it for those 2 things?
Good afternoon, Mayor and the council members. I'm Binu Abraham from San Benito Council of Governments. I will attempt to make an answer, but I might need to have more time to go and do more research. So we have a lot of transportation agencies and committees that are under the California Transportation Commission that are looking at this exact same issue. We are not, I guarantee you, we are not the only county that is having this issue, where we are trying to address our growth and safety in a sustainable manner, and we are hindered by the increasing cost of projects, transportation projects. So there is a rural county task force that is doing a VMT analysis and a study that is now funded by the CTC, or the California Transportation Commission, to look at this exact issue, whether the rural counties are being unfairly cost ineffective in their project. Because how you calculate a VMD is same whether you are a rural or an urban county, but urban counties do not behave the way the rural counties do. If the state is asking us to look into more active transportation or transit solutions to address or the curb the increase in vehicle miles travel, urban counties have an advantage because they have more density, they have closer destination, they can provide more transit services, they can provide more bike and other modes of transportation, which rural counties do not have. So that is being addressed there. And so we can partner with them because it is going to go back to the CTC for an action that's then going to the state. Well, CTC is the state, but it's one step in the process. We also have a lot of advocacy that's happening to talk about this exact issue. And we are trying. We have the Self-Help County Coalition, which is just comprised of all the counties in California that are self-help. So we are part of that. We are part of the Rural County Task Force. We are part of the California Transportation Commission. And we are using all of these venues to have this conversation. And I assure you, every one of these committees and task forces are having this exact same conversation when it comes to rural counties.
Thank you.
And then I can chime in on the funding side.
Sure.
So the funding decisions would go through the State Assembly's Committee on Appropriations, and that's where they would hear those bills. So we would have to work through the legislative process to get a bill brought forward there, and then they would hear that. So we would not be able to agendize it, but we can start that process of trying to, through the letter and through advocacy, getting a bill heard. And then if successful in creating new methodology on the rural, then that puts you in a better position for competitive grants as well.
Okay, so what I'm looking for, and I think I kind of heard it, is just something with a little more certainty. I think I brought that up last time you were here, Binu. This is one of the most pressing issues, so I'm looking for something with a little more certainty. Again, Robert Rivas is the Speaker of the House. He's representing our area, and we are in dire need of this issue to be addressed. I understand what you're saying, that we're not the only ones, but my two things here are the VMT is hurting us. So you said we can partner with the rural counties. I'm thinking that might be too long. But if we were to go through the legislative process, you said we can start that, then we can then mention the VMT problem and the funding problem in that legislative process, can we not?
You'd have to advocate and get the assembly member or anybody in the
Sponsor
state
the
office
bill.
to sponsor the bill
Got it.
and to carry the bill. So often you'll have organizations partner to draft legislation in hopes that a bill gets carried,
Yeah.
or their staff will do the opposite and work and develop the bill and bring it forward.
Okay, so then that sounds like something a little more tangible and not so far-fetched or long waiting, I would say. My other question would be, Binu, since this is such a pressing issue, can you come back once a month and just give us an update?
I definitely can.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
One thing I forgot to mention is there is another agency, CalCog, which is a California Council of Government. They are also using this, and we all have lobbyists and advocacy group that help in getting that message across to our legislators.
Yeah, I just want to make sure like we get on the agenda, it's documented, we're writing, we're sending emails, we're sending letters, and we can trace all of those steps and maybe even start writing, I don't know, something that says the city of Hollister has done this, we've done this, we've done this. That's what I would like to see so that we can say, hey, we've done all these things. But maybe you can get on the agenda of that one, maybe you can get on the agenda of the Rural County Task Force, and maybe we could start the, I forgot, what did you say, Dave?
Just working with the assembly member's office on
to
getting
get a
a
bill
bill
sponsored. That would be really, really helpful and something. Thank you.
Yes, Councilmember Burns.
Thank you, Mayor. City manager, to maybe pursue a legislative action, do we have staff that could do that? I mean, I'm familiar with many organizations, and that seems to be probably the most direct, most thorough, most immediate action possible, particularly when you look at the volatile accidents that have happened out there and the victims of all of these things. And I really like that suggestion, and I know in your past life you come with some expertise in that area, but if we don't have the right people, I would be very willing to support bringing a consultant on. I don't care what it takes, because I would agree that sooner than later is much better, and the problem with the government process is it's just painfully slow, and we don't have time to be painfully slow, even though it's thorough and it's effective. I personally would be amazed if we see 25 built in 10 years or expanded. I don't know if it'll be done in my lifetime. And candidly, when it is, it will be ineffective then anyway. It won't meet the needs of our region. So if we need to get somebody, I would certainly support that.
So I've actually completed a request for proposal for lobbyist firms, but just haven't brought it forward. I was waiting to get through budget and get a better look at Q1. So that is something that technically I've gone through that process from a procurement standpoint, and that could be something that if we brought forward, we could task them with.
Great, thank you. Thank you, Mayor.
Do you have anything? Anything to add? Yes, please, go ahead.
Thank you, Bina, for the additional information. Can you share the advocacy efforts that have already been made by the current COG and CalCOG assigned members, please? And also please include the appointments to the California Transportation Commission and the regional work with the various parties and just in the last year. Just last year, not the years before, just this year.
Yeah, I'll try to remember. If I make a mistake, please, if one of you remember, please chime in. We make 3 appointments from our board. One is to the Central Coast Coalition, which is comprised of the 5 counties in the Central Coast. And we have an advocacy group. We go at least once a year to Sacramento and meet with all our legislative members. And then we have the self-help county that we are part of, and we go to Sacramento, we meet with all our legislators there. CalCOG, we are again member of CalCOG, and I think Mayor Casey and Director Morales are both part of the CalCOG board members. So that is another place where we do advocacy. And then on top of that, I'm now forgetting all the other agencies. We have Mobility Partnership. We have Commissioner Tiffany on our CTC, who is from this county, and he can talk about Highway 25. And I have personally heard Speaker Rivas talk at least two meetings, one in Anaheim and one somewhere else, where he was talking specifically about Highway 25 and the significance and the importance of getting it built. So I know that it's been talked about, and I understand and I appreciate the interest in having more dedicated advocacy, which will definitely help. The more voice we can have, the better it is. And I know at least a couple of times, Supervisor Curo, Director Morales, and Mayor Casey have come with me to Sacramento for various advocacy groups.
And I'd like to add that there's at least 4 other advocacy groups that have international influence that have also at least gone to Sacramento 4 times to help with these efforts. And the advocacy also is coming from Speaker Reeves' office.
Okay, and I just want to add, because, Speaker Rivas has been quite accessible to us here. And the chair of the Board of Supervisors and I, as well as the vice mayor in San Juan Bautista, we've had some regular meetings with him discussing the arena numbers and Highway 25 and our big issues. And so I think it's very much on his radar. I've heard him mention it several times, and we're actually going to have another meeting. So I think we have his ear. I think that he wants to focus in on this. So I'm in favor of this letter, but I don't mind the idea of also getting it out to the Rural Task Force and other agencies. And I will say, sitting on the CalCOG, we did talk about this very subject, the idea of rural communities and how difficult it's been for us to meet that VMT requirement. And it's kind of not a one-size-fits-all. And also, I just want to say that I've spoken with Bob Tiffany a number of times, and he's quite the advocate for rural communities, not just for us, because he can't be just for us, but he has been quite vocal at the CTC around this issue. So I think we have a lot of good momentum here, and I'm in favor of sending a letter, and I'm not opposed to lobbyists or something, but I will say we have some folks who are pretty active here, meeting with congresswomen and senators, as well as our local speaker, who, like I said, this is his home, and he's very focused on helping us with our big issues. So that's all I wanted to add.
And I forgot to mention that Mayor Casey, thank you for your advocacy effort with Congresswoman Zoe Lofgren's office. Yeah.
All right. Do we have public comment on this item?
Yes, Mayor Casey. Andy Shaw-Corin.
It's nice to stand up again. This is the kind of governance that really everybody now feels good about each other, but the reality is they shouldn't, because it reminds me of Shakespeare almost, Hamlet, full of sound and fury, but signifying nothing. You can all be really excited about working with Robert Rivas to get Highway 25 expanded, but it's like railing against the tide or asking for a second Christmas. It's not going to happen. I think Mr. Burns was actually right on target on this. The state's budget situation is grim, and frankly, there are other priorities that are higher at this point, and it shouldn't even be it's not even the right answer for San Benito County. As much as everybody hates driving on 156, you'll soon find out when we expand 156, within a year or two, you're going to say, that didn't help at all. And why didn't it help at all? Because as soon as it hits Highway 101, it's going to back up for miles, and you're going to be in a parking lot over there, the same way it happens in Santa Cruz after they keep on widening all the roads, and it's still the most miserable place to drive to. So that's what's going to happen. So we're all waiting for this wonderful Christmas to come, the special day when we expand 156 or 25, and then the great disappointment that comes that it didn't make your life any better. We need to actually think of, if you want to get Robert Rivas to do something, we had great success recently with AB 3233, which is probably the most heroic thing that Robert Rivas ever did. That's the battling with the oil industry. We banned fracking in our county. They stopped them from doing 1,000 oil wells by the national park. And the oil industry got engaged in trying to stop local authorities from doing anything regarding petroleum. In Measure Z in Monterey County, we had banned fracking, new oil wells, and wastewater injection, and the court struck it down. And the Supreme Court said there was a little phrase in the resource code from 1965, I think, that literally said nothing. And they said, well, that means that nobody on a local level can do anything. Well, just recently, and you should read about it, with 10 minutes to spare in the state Senate, they passed AB 3233, and Robert Rivas played a role. Bill Monning played a huge role. I was on the phone with him constantly. And now we can guarantee that we do have some local authority, at least over one thing. Thank you.
Thank you.
Those are all the public comments for this item.
Okay. Do you have any further discussion or deliberation on this item?
Madam Mayor.
Okay. Yes, Vice Mayor.
Thank you. So speaking of Robert Rivas, his representative is sitting right here in the audience. He was here last time we talked about Highway 25. So yeah, I haven't heard from him. I haven't heard from Robert Rivas, the Speaker of the House, either. So you can sit here and pat yourself on the back all you would like about the committees that you put together and the people that you're having conversations with, but that doesn't matter to the people that we represent. Because if you have not got Highway 25 done, or if you don't have something tangible to show them, then we're not doing the job we're elected to do. So that's what concerns me. When we sit up here and we say all of this Shakespearean language about how this is happening and this is happening, well, where's the results of that? That's what concerns me. When people come and they ask us, why am I sitting in traffic? Why are so many crashes happening? Why are people dying? And why is my quality of life so deteriorated? And we don't have an answer for them because we have not produced tangible results. I'm happy to say that because of this conversation that we're having the second time here with the COG director, I feel like we're moving in the right direction now. But we need to do it in a public forum. So I'm glad that Binu said she'd come here once a month to give us an update on this. And the three things that I heard while we're sitting up here is to, number one, start the legislative process to get the VMTs and then the funding looked at for Highway 25, expansion of Highway 25. And hopefully the Speaker of our House, who's our representative, will sponsor that bill. Number two, Binu said that she can get this letter to the two committees that she spoke of, and possibly more that can help us with those two things, the funding and the VMT. And then number 3, I heard the city manager said he was already trying to get a lobbyist to help us out work on that. So those are the things that I would ask this council to support so that we can provide some tangible results to the people who elect us in office. Thank you.
Anything? No?
I want to thank you guys for all the work that you're doing there. You know, it's I see the progress that's moving. I don't travel 25 a lot. I'll be honest. I don't leave the county that much, but I know the people that do are my neighbors and my constituents, and so thank you for all the work that you're putting into this. Benu, thank you.
Anything else? No. All right, do we want to make a motion on this item?
Is a motion necessary?
Or do we just give you direction on the letter?
Well, we had
then?
discussed
It
and
says motion,
authorize us
so-
to
I guess-
send the letter. So if there was no feedback on the letter,
I think it's just the idea of what was discussed about adding, I don't know if it's copying the rural task force and copying but I think it should be addressed to the speaker. He is our representative, and so that would be my suggestion.
So just so we're clear, if I can, Madam Mayor.
Certainly.
Thank you. The other 2 things, or 3 things that we talked about. Number 1, legislative process. Are you in favor of including that in your motion to begin the legislative process?
Could you elaborate, City Manager? The legislative process is a rather long process it's not something that's going to...
yeah, we can't guarantee that a legislator would, carry the bill, but, we would work if the motion was made and voted on in the way that the vice mayor recommended, we would have lobbyist support to then help with that process. And then that we would make efforts, we could report back on those efforts. There's no guarantee that they're going to carry a bill.
Well, so what is the will of the council? What do you feel about the letter? Councilmember Burns?
I support the letter 100%, of course. I mean, I think it was very well written, it's very timely, and thank you to staff for getting that piece done. I do support moving forward with a legislative advocate to try and help staff to then figure out how we take this forward to Sacramento 100%. And I do agree with sending it over the letter to the rural counties that were spoken about as well.
Okay.
We got nothing to lose, in my mind.
No, all
Thank you.
avenues. So,
So if that's the case, Madam Mayor, can we add those friendly amendments to your motion?
what specifically are you wanting to add? I
Number
just
1,
heard- I'm fine with the lobbyist. I said that already. I'm fine with CCing it to other groups as well. You mentioned something about
beginning the legislative process.
That's a whole separate thing to me. That doesn't, I think.
Well,
the
then
letter-
maybe we can agendize that for a future meeting to talk about
Matt,
what
you
that
can
looks
bring
like.
that up at the end of the meeting if
I
you'd like.
can't.
You can't bring it up.
Not
Okay,
tonight.
so
You have a
well, you
form
can put it
process.
on your form to bring it back, but I think the letter as it stands is worth sending out now as opposed to pushing it out.
Okay.
So unless anyone feels differently.
Question for the city attorney, if I can.
Yes, go ahead.
Do you see what I'm trying to accomplish? And do you think that we could accomplish that in a motion rather than filling out the form and having to bring it back on a different time?
Yeah, if the mayor wanted to amend her motion to do that, it doesn't sound like she wants to amend her motion to do that.
I would agree with you.
I've asked for input from the rest of the council.
Okay.
Does the rest of the council wish to amend the letter or change it to reflect legislative, I guess, information? What, Councilmember Burns?
Thank you, Mayor. I don't know that we have to amend the letter to make a request to the staff to.
Yeah.
That's what I'm wondering.
Yeah, maybe we're talking in circles here.
I think we are.
Can I could recap if that's
Yeah,
from what we're
please.
hearing at the staff
Yeah,
level?
please do.
So I'm hearing no edits to the letter itself.
Right.
The original request was to bring a letter forward, have it sent to the speaker. I think that still stands.
Right.
What I've heard is the vice mayor asked for a few additional things to be added to that. Staff are only going to make a recommended action that relates to what was brought forward, what we were asked to bring forward.
Mm-hmm.
So in that was working with a lobbyist, essentially, to work to try to, start a legislative process, work with the speaker's office, and try to get a bill sponsored. with no guarantees that that would happen, as well as take this letter and not only send it to the Speaker's office, but to the other offices that the Executive Director of COG had mentioned.
Yeah,
I believe
think that sounds right. Does it not?
Well, I'm just going to check with the city attorney if I can.
Sure, go
Thank
ahead.
you. Mary, do you see what I'm trying to accomplish? And does that satisfy what I'm trying to accomplish?
I don't know if that satisfies what you're trying to accomplish.
I don't feel like it does either. So if we can just add some language in there that the city of Hollister, the city council, is dedicated to starting the legislative process.
In the letter.
Not in the letter, no, in our motion or in the minutes, that it's reflected.
If the mayor wants to amend
Is
our
that
motion, but it
okay?
doesn't sound like it.
I'd rather hear from the rest of the council. I'm not necessarily opposed. I just feel like it's a lot of.
So I think the city manager's suggestion accomplishes what the essence of the council's desire is. And by reaching out for a legislative advocate for the city, he's already spoken about how he's got a process to bring back for that anyway. Just feels to me like maybe we're going to move that forward sooner than he may have intended to address this. But
That's my understanding.
so for me, I think if we just made a motion, I don't even know the words to use anymore. I mean, clearly I think council's on board with approving the letter as proposed.
Yes.
I think in addition to that, we would like to say in a motion that and right now we've heard of a couple different rural agencies that our COG director has spoken about, but candidly, I don't even know if we want to lock her down to 2. I mean, if she comes back and goes, I should have done 4 or 5, I think we get it out there. And then I also think the legislative piece, I think we're good. I just think we're talking in circles, as you suggested.
Yeah,
and as long as the dialogue at the dais has been clear, I think we're good to go. Myself with
Me
as
too.
is. And so I think, Vice Mayor, we do accomplish what your request is. And I think we're trying to make this overly complicated. I think the city manager has really defined the direction, and I would support whatever that motion would be to
So-
reflect the city manager's comments and the mayor's desire. Thank you.
If I can maybe be a little bit more clear about it.
Okay.
Thank you. The lobbyist is not specifically hired just to bring legislation process forward for this Highway 25. The lobbyist that he's speaking of is going to be lobbying for a number of different things. I want to make sure that it's clear that we're moving forward with the legislative process. Maybe you include language as we're going to hire a lobbyist, and the first thing they're going to do is move forward with the legislative process of expanding Highway 25. Something to that effect.
Wouldn't it be appropriate to do that when he actually brings the item forward for consideration? That we give the priorities then as to what we want the lobbyists to do?
Sure. Then when is that going to happen?
Yes, please.
It's very clear that some of our colleagues needed education on the process, because I think people are at the vision or the want or the goal is the same. I think it's the language that's being used. So, and that has to do with just understanding what that means. So I think that what the mayor has asked will get us to the common goal. The language that's currently being asked is just inappropriate because there isn't that understanding of that legislative process and also the timelines. So I am in full support of moving forward with your language. And if our council would like a presentation on the legislative process, then I think we can agendize later on when we're asking for items from city from the city manager.
All right. Are we good?
I second that.
Well,
One
you
question.
have a motion.
Okay.
pending.
One more question.
You asked for a friendly amendment. Is there?
Do we have a timeline for when the lobbyist will be brought back?
I think that's beyond the scope of this conversation. I
Okay.
think that's something
So
that
we
would
have
to
no
come back.
timeline. Okay, thank you.
So are you withdrawing your friendly amendment? Do you want to see if there's a second to it?
My concern is that we're going to get a lobbyist.
I don't
that's
want to
not
discuss it, sir.
focused
I'm
on
asking
Highway
you,
25.
I'm asking you about the motion you made, a friendly amendment to the motion. You either are
Sure.
asking for a second or you are asking to withdraw it.
Let
So-
me clarify my motion. I'm making a friendly amendment to start the legislative process, send the letter to committees and any others that need to be sent to, hire a lobbyist. That's my friendly amendment.
Okay, is there a second to that amendment?
Second.
All right, all those in favor?
Will there
Yes.
be discussion on this?
I'm sorry, do we need to have further discussion on it?
If you need further discussion, yeah.
So there are tons of committees. So are you sending it to all the committees at the state?
The request initially was the committees that Banu had mentioned, and if we're comfortable with the letter, then we would send it to the committees we feel appropriate to send it to. Absent a legislative platform, typically, like if we had a legislative platform that was voted on and approved, we would have the authority to then send out letters of support, letters of opposition to matters that it didn't even need to come here, right? So by getting that direction, I would be getting direction to send letters to the appropriate committees that would have an influence on this.
Okay, because that was different than what I just heard, the amendment. And so I just want to be very clear, because absent clarity, then if you send it to two committees, then that doesn't fulfill the motion, which were the two committees that were just named. But depending on the process, different committees touch that document, depending on the process. So again, absent that understanding, the motion doesn't speak to what the outcome is, unless you're saying that you are going to walk it through the process.
So at this time, if I can, Madam Mayor?
Yes, please, go
There's
ahead.
a first, there's a second. She called for a vote. Why don't we take a vote on this?
Is there any further discussion? Are we going to take a vote?
I would like further discussion.
Yes.
Again, I actually understand what Councilmember Morales has said, and I would like to really refine what the ask is so that there's clarity there. And so, Councilmember Morales, if you want to speak more to the specificity that you think would be appropriate, I'd be more than interested in those comments.
So my recommendation is that we have Banu outline the various process. So we have California COG, there's committees, there's the rule, there's the California Transportation Commission, we can sponsor a bill, we have to get champions to do that. So each have a different process and different timelines. And if we are saying to our city manager, send it to all the committees, then are we saying, because I heard 2, I've outlined 4, but unless we are clear, and also the timelines are very important, because it doesn't matter if we send it now, if they're not hearing and if they're closed, then that document gets lost. So there's the appropriate timeliness and the appropriate avenues, and I think for us to be, not just throw things out in the wind, if we want to be intentional with our time and money, then I recommend having, again, I think there's agreement on the goal, but I think the council could provide better direction in terms of how, when, right? And the venues that would be best, because the last thing we want to do is throw everything out there to see what sticks, and then that letter has no weight and no impact.
So then perhaps a better direction would be to authorize the city manager to issue the letter as proposed, and then maybe agendize the broader conversation for the next council meeting or 2 out, whatever that looks like, so that we can have that specificity, because I do like that. And I think that's a better path than just a shotgun approach where we push it all out. But I also understand what Vice Mayor Resendez's concerns are, I believe, because time is of the essence. And so I would like, that would be my recommendation to this council for consideration. Move the letter forward, bring the other conversation back to a time specific with a staff report that is well thought out, and ultimately gets us to where we would like to go anyway. And so that would be my thoughts for council's consideration.
So was that my original motion then, or? Because I think that's what we talked about.
Right, so just process-wise, it sounds like Councilmember Burns is withdrawing his second. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. So you no longer have a second to the friendly amendment, and then I think city manager has something to add.
Yes.
Yeah, I would just add that if you're going to look at it from that sequencing, and where we want to have a very specific, in-depth conversation on, you know, getting a bill sponsored and what all of that looks like, I would suggest that we first bring forward the lobbyist contract and then use that expertise, because that is what you would use that service for.
Yeah.
So I feel like if we're doing that prior to bringing that on, that would be just getting one step ahead of ourselves. I think it would be best to have that expertise on hand.
Okay.
Madam Mayor,
Yes.
do we have a date that we can talk about that for certain?
So what we have to do is evaluate. We've gone through the process, but we need to reach out to the vendors, the bidders, and work that through with them, and then go through a contract negotiation. So we would work to bring it back as timely as possible, but I can't say for certain that, I can't speak for them at this point.
Can we have an update, let's say, next month?
Yeah, we could bring an update on that.
Okay.
That would be fine.
Okay. And probably at the same time, I would assume that Binu would be here as well. So
Yeah, we can sequence that together.
Okay.
So
Sounds
are
good.
you withdrawing your friendly amendment then?
Well, yeah, I think so. Thanks.
Okay, so then you're back
Motion
to
to
the
approve.
original motion on the floor to approve. You need a second, Mayor.
All right, do we have a second? Who?
I'll second.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Yes,
Thank you.
All
That was
those
easy.
opposed? Okay, motion carries 5-0.
Okay. Oh, wait, you still.
All right, we're going to move on then to committee assignments. Does anyone have a report on ad hoc or standing committee meetings? Councilmember Perez, do you have anything?
Nothing to report.
Councilmember Morales, anything? Councilmember Burns?
I'm going to defer to you, Mayor. Thank you.
Dear. Just briefly, we had a motorcycle rally ad hoc meeting just to prepare. Basically, we're going to be doing a town hall style meeting for the community to come in and discuss the rally and talk about kind of a brainstorming session, and also to talk about things that have worked in the past, things that haven't worked, to maybe discuss some of the issues that the city's dealing with. And then also, my understanding is there may be a proposal coming forward, an exploratory proposal. So we're working on setting that meeting up in the next 3 weeks or so, I believe. So there will be more to come on that. All right, so we can move on to council reports. Councilmember Perez, did you have anything you wanted to report out on? No. Councilmember Morales?
This is the request, right, or wants?
Yeah, it's
Okay.
the general
Thank you.
reports at the end.
So I would like to.
Yeah, I'm sorry. This is, you have a form for that process now for council member requests.
Okay, so this
Through a
process would
policy
be.
you adopted.
So then what are we reporting on for this? We've already reported on
Informational
committees.
reports. I have one, but do you have any?
So
Anything that's going to be agendized has to have the form, and it has to be submitted. That we have a new process now for that.
That's correct. And typically this part of the agenda, most agency is for the members of the legislative body to give reports on either events they've been to or upcoming things that would be of interest to the community and other members of that legislative body.
Okay, then I have nothing.
Anything? Councilmember Burns?
I do. First of all, I absolutely want to thank staff, and I want to thank this council for approving my discretionary funds for the dog stations and for the sound wall where we're going to put Sunny Slope Village back up. And I also want to thank staff for helping with my parks over this period of time. So thank you, thank you, thank you, and thank you, council, as well. And that concludes my report.
There you go. Okay. Do you have anything, Vice Mayor?
Nothing to report, thank you.
Okay, I just have one item, and it's a little confusing given our new agenda process because in our last meeting, it was requested to have a disciplinary hearing, and my understanding in reviewing the code, I, as the mayor, would request to bring that forward. And since we had consensus, I don't think I need to do an agenda item on this since it's in my purview to request it. So I'm requesting that we agendize for a future meeting. I know we've got a lot on the agenda coming up at the next meeting, but perhaps the following meeting we could schedule a disciplinary hearing for Councilmember Resendez or Vice Mayor Resendez.
A question for the city attorney.
I'm sorry you haven't been recognized yet, sir. I'm waiting question-wise as far as do we need to do anything further to schedule that or?
Let me take a look at the code of conduct.
Mm-hmm.
So it says it is the responsibility of the mayor to initiate action if a council member's behavior may warrant sanction. So if no action is taken by the mayor, then the alleged violation can be brought up with the full council. So you have that ability, mayor, on your own to initiate bringing something back.
Okay, and it was brought up at the past meeting by a council member, and I am choosing to initiate the action.
That's all that's needed.
Okay.
Can I ask my question to the city attorney about that?
Yes, you may.
Thank you. So it's my recollection that the process to bring items forward was approved and adopted before that request was made. Shouldn't we follow that process to bring this forward? In other words, if it was approved before that request was made, shouldn't have been put in writing to put on the agenda so that we can follow the new process? Or am I mistaken in asking that?
So your code of conduct says it's the responsibility of the mayor to initiate the action if a council member's behavior may warrant sanction. So there's nothing to bring back to the council. If the mayor refused to initiate action, then something would come back to council. So
Got it.
according to your own policy, no.
Thank you.
Madam Mayor?
Yes, Councilmember.
I would like to add the disclosure of confidential information from closed session to that list, please.
So you can bring that according to your policy. If violations continue, the matter should be referred to the mayor in private. You have that ability to have that discussion. Just don't violate the Brown Act with discussions with other people.
Okay. Thank you. City Manager, do you have a report for us?
Nothing to report this evening.
Okay. Then I think there being no further business, we're going to move to closed session.
I need to read the descriptions before you go into closed session.
I'm still confused. We were talking about adjourning before closed session. Are we doing that? Are we?
No, you're
not?
going to adjourn into closed session, but
Okay,
under the
there you
government
go.
code, these have to be
Doesn't
read
really say
aloud.
that, so maybe we could add that, Jen, into the script. Thank you.
So 11.1, conference with legal counsel, anticipated litigation pursuant to government code section 54956.9, significant exposure to litigation pursuant to paragraph 2 or 3 of subdivision D of section 54956.9 of the government code, one case. 11.2, closed session pursuant to government code section 54956.9 D1, conference with legal counsel, existing litigation, name of case, City of Hollister v. Civic Allendale LLC, case number CU 24000015. 11.3, conference with legal counsel, anticipated litigation pursuant to Government Code Section 54956.9, significant exposure to litigation pursuant to paragraph 2 or 3 of subdivision D of Section 54956.9 of the Government Code. 2 cases. The reason these are listed separately as 11.1 and 11.3 is I'm conflicted out of 11.1, so I will join you in closed session after you've entertained that item.
Okay. All right, there being no further business, this meeting's now adjourned.